Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of Mums on Cloud 9. I'm delighted to have Naomi Buff here, who's going to be talking to us about how to navigate a midlife crisis. So Naomi, welcome and thank you for joining us today. Do you just want to tell people a little bit more about your background and what exactly is a midlife crisis?
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. So I'm Naomi Buff. I'm a transformational coach and a breathwork facilitator. And alongside those, I also weave in other holistic modalities that are based on science, but they have like ancient backgrounds, such as like sound therapy, Reiki, cacao. And it's all about just helping people navigate the challenges that in all phases of life. I am officially in midlife, according to my teenage son. Apparently, it's when we hit 40. I was in denial, I must say. And then I Googled it and I think it said like 40. I was like, damn it. And my life had a little bit of let's say, just didn't go to plan when at 40, my marriage collapsed and my business collapsed and everything collapsed. And I just found myself just completely on the floor, having one of those bedroom floor breakdowns. And I had quite a few of those. And so like a midlife, I call it like a midlife awakening. It's a phase in our life when, and in our 40s, we have like real significant shifts and changes mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And it can affect us in like lots of different ways. And yeah, I think like hormones can be like a really big impact to that. But then there's also lots of life factors as well that can impact it.
It's interesting, isn't it? Have you experienced this yet, Kelly? Are you there yet?
Oh, well, I am at midlife. I'm 40, so I guess I am at
You only
midlife.
just picked it.
I was hoping that my midlife crisis would be around 50, but I think I've already had maybe 2 or 3, possibly 5 midlife crises already, and going through a complete life shift. And I think maybe I grew up quite quickly, so maybe mentally I would have been at 40 in my 20s and 30s. But again, I think going through a lot of changes, going through divorce, changing my lifestyle, living abroad for a number of years and being isolated, I've always come back to my family home when things have gone wrong, and I had to rebuild myself. So lost my home, lost my husband, not my current husband, who I love dearly, and I had to start again with my life. So I feel like I've had to rebuild myself maybe 2 or 3 times before getting to 36, 37, where I felt, okay, you know what, I'm actually a grown up now, and I've actually made the achievements I fully want to make, so I don't know, maybe.
Well, I think it's maybe like reflective of that experience of rebuilding and like, reinventing. I always think about myself as like Madonna. Madonna reinvents herself every 10
Every
years. And I just
week.
think, I like the idea now you said about awakening. I know exactly. It's like she come out with a new album with a new outfit, with a new persona. And it's like, that's me. When I went through the divorce and I was like stepping out, I was like, oh, I'm back in my 20s again. This is a new persona, right? I'm just gonna go with this. And you can change your clothes and everything else. So I think I really resonate with that, certainly from the divorce angle, Kelly. I think you kind of go, well, actually, who am I now? What do I want to, how do I want to define myself? Who am I hanging out with? What am I going to do? Where am I going to live? All of these things. And I think when I was younger, I mean, going back to what you said about younger years, I moved to go to university, then moved to London, then moved out of uni, moved out of London to live with my ex-partner. And the thing is, each time you're moving, you're kind of reinventing your life and what everything looks like again, isn't it? So you kind of had some rehearsal for this. But I think when you're going through grief with it and you've lost, you can have a choice to do that and it's a forward choice. Whereas if you've had this midlife crisis and it's been triggered when you didn't want it to happen, or when you're losing a sense of your family, and there's a grief to it, I think it's slightly different. There's probably a lot of emotion there, isn't there, as well? So I think that's my reflection on it. Lynn, what about you? Does this resonate with you?
Yeah, so probably not. I'm sorry to say, everyone, but from my side, nothing really has ever happened to me other than the fact that every 10, 11 years, I tend to change my job.
Yeah, I was going to say,
there you go.
Midlife crisis is changing jobs, Lynn.
Yeah,
you've
no,
done
absolutely.
so many jobs.
I think for me though, I'm almost horizontal. I tend to go with the flow with most things. Like, that's just the way I am. I don't quite know why. But absolutely, in terms of jobs, you mentioned about, empty nesters as well when we were talking just now, Naomi. And I haven't even had that because my children actually have parts of my house. So we all still live together. But, I suppose it does come back to me saying that I have changed my job several times, but as I say, I do tend to just go with the flow. So I can't really tell you any crisis times, but I suppose it does raise a question for me. So, how do I know if I'm having a midlife crisis?
Well, I say midlife awakening. And it's just awakening, and
Yeah.
it is just, it's basically, it's just change, like it is, and we go through like different phases of our life of change, as you've said, like you've changed your job like every 10 years. Kelly, you mentioned about like when you've like moved and every time you've had to reinvent yourself, and Heather, you mentioned about with like your divorce. So all of these things are change, and with change comes, well, discomfort, because you're stepping out of your comfort zone. And when you step out of your comfort zone, like you're like, oh, I don't know what life is like over here. So it brings a lot of uncertainty, and it can really like bring up a lot of emotions. And Heather, you touched on this where like you mentioned grief. Like when we let go of something and we move into something new, there is a grieving process, even if like what we're moving away from doesn't serve us, even if like we're coming out of a marriage which was very toxic and it could be abusive, narcissistic, it could have been very restrictive, very controlling, but still the person who's moving away from that is still going to go through a grieving process. And that's not to say that they're missing it, it's that life became like comfortable. So like the awakening is all about shifting, changing and moving, and everything in life always changes. Like we have like a menstrual cycle, so like every single month we are physically changing in our body, and within that menstrual cycle there are 4 different phases. So from one week to the next we are not the same woman, and you'll know that to be true. We have like the moon cycle. yeah, exactly. And we have like the moon cycles as well, and we have like the seasons. So everything in our whole world around us, in this like universe that we live, is always shifting and changing, yet we get really stuck in comfort and we get stuck in what we know. And that's literally just because there's a part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex, which just keeps us very much stuck in our comfort zone. So when we kind of like go through these different phases, and I do think it's easier in your 20s because you literally don't care. And then 30s, like you're still kind of like finding your feet. But I like to think by the time like you get to your 40s, it's like you put in all of the work, you put in all of that groundwork. And it's almost like stepping into your power, going, okay, like I've worked for this. Now I'm going to take like ownership, sovereignty. I'm stepping into my power and I'm going to live the life that I want to live. So it's almost like a becoming of like who you want to be, and like carving like the next years of your life and making them the best years of your life, because like you don't care what people think. You've set your boundaries. You're living life in alignment with your truth. You've let go of the things that don't serve you, and all of that is really uncomfortable. It doesn't come easily to put boundaries in place, to cut off like toxic relationships, to leave jobs that don't serve you, to move away from all of that. And all of this creates like this emotional like turmoil, and you can either lean into it and embrace it and go, right, that's it, I'm looking at these years as like really empowering, really exciting, which is hence my awakening, because you're awakening to who you're here to become. It's like this inner transformation. Or the crisis, like you become the victim of the story and be like, oh my God, life's over, I can't cope with this. And the way that, and we've got so much on social media, we've got so much in the news, which is also negative. So we are naturally going to be conditioned into the doom and gloom. Oh my God, menopause, life's over. Like, that's it. I'm just going to lock myself in a cupboard and never come out again, But in actual fact, like these could be like the best years of our life. And it is just about like alchemizing that energy and like working with the emotions, leaning into the discomforts, and just carving the way forwards.
I think I've always enjoyed getting older, because I think people take you more seriously. Like you feel as though you kind of know what you like and what you don't like. And actually, however hard it is, to make some of those changes, when you've done them, you feel quite proud, to can walk away actually feeling happier out of the back of them. But then you have to do the work to kind of navigate through all of that stuff. Like there's a lot of emotional stuff that comes off the back of it, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. But as I said, like it's you do the work to get to that phase where you're like, okay, then like I've earned this.
Okay.
So, I mean, talking about emotions, I know from a personal point of view, I always give myself a 2 week like mourning process. So I will go through the 2 weeks of feeling sorry for myself, sulking, whinging, bitching, and moaning. And then after I've done
mostly
that, got
to
it
me.
mostly to Lynn. But Lynn is my Disneyland. She's the happiest person on earth. So whatever I say. But
We all need a Disneyland.
I've never met someone who's always happy and always so chilled. So, but you know, the anxiety, and then you go for those emotions, and then I tend to set myself these targets of what I need to do next. So, what are the kind of stages of the emotions that people can go through, and how do we kind of, as opposed to just compartmentalize again, shoving it away, how do we cleanse that to be able to set those goals to move forward to reach that next stage of our life or crisis or awakening?
Yeah, a bucket load of tequila. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. No. So I think it is just being very present with like the emotions that are coming up and not trying. And we live in this like world where we are conditioned to push emotions down. And we have been, that's our conditioning from childhood, because like if we would get emotional as a child, it's like, oh, don't worry, you're okay. So we grew up with this belief, oh no, like I'm okay. I can't cry or be angry. And listen, it's not, we can't like walk around Sainsbury's like screaming, crying, and like raging.
I have done once,
like,
but never again.
Well, I might have done it. I've had a moment at a train station where I just threw everything down. I was like, I can't keep this in anymore.
Yeah,
And
of
I
course.
soon realised actually, like, might not be safe to. But I think it is like very much about being present with the emotions. So give yourself time and space to look at like what's coming up for you, and do it with a really curious and open mind, with compassion. And imagine that like you've got a Lynn with Disneyland Lynn, who is that person, but you have to be that person for yourself that is holding that space with like kindness, compassion, and love. And you have to like create that container for yourself where like you allow your emotions to come up. Oh, I'm feeling really angry because this. I'm feeling resentful, and like naming what the emotions are and why they are. So you're validating them. And then like just that in itself can be hugely healing, because you're giving it a voice, you're giving it a space rather than pushing it down and like it just festering within you and just kind of becoming like a toxicity.
Mm-mm.
And then there are like other like things that you can do to move through them. Like when I work with clients, I do like a lot of forgiveness work, and that can be like forgiving like partners that, as I said before, that have been narcissistic or abusive. And I work with like a lot of like domestic abuse as well. And so to take somebody through that process of forgiving like an abuser is really, really huge. But what we have to understand about forgiveness is it's not about the other person. They don't benefit from it. The only person that benefits from forgiveness is you, because holding on to anger and resentment and pain in the past is like drinking poison and expecting that other person to die. So all of the work that we do is all about like freeing yourself from the emotions that you're holding on to. And if it's something like anger or resentment or sadness or loneliness from like a past partner, like working through different tools. For me, like conscious connected breath work is by far the most powerful modality that there is. It just goes beyond anything that I've ever experienced. It's one of the things that I teach. And the reason why I love conscious connected breath so much is because it really empowers the individual. Because I mean, I'm a healer as well, I do sound therapy, and I'm a coach. So I have people come to me all the time for me to help them with their issues, with their problems, with their traumas. But with the breath work, like the breath, like you take around about like 22,000 breaths a day, and each breath has a capacity to shift and change your whole reality. And when you realize that by just breathing, like you can change your life, you can release trauma, you can get creative insights, you can connect to something greater, you can cultivate a self-relationship of like self-leadership, you can heal yourself through your breath. Like it's so empowering because that's your breath. Like you hold the key to your transformation. So like the breath work is like easily like one of the best ways to release the emotions. But I think it is just very much about, and also like realizing like with emotions that you will continually yo-yo. Like 1 minute you feel like you can rule the world, and the next minute, like the next day, like you couldn't run a bath. And like you just have to be okay with that, and just give yourself permission just to feel what you feel, with the intention of always moving forwards. Just like every day, like take one aligned action. What one thing do I need to do today that my future self, who is empowered, who is happy, who is content. What does that version of me look like? What does she do? And then just take one, even if it's like walking around the block, even if it's taking a shower, or like brushing your teeth, putting some makeup on, whatever it is, like being present with the emotions, but then always moving forward, always having that goal and intention. Because what we can do is we can stay stuck in the emotion, and that is not healthy. So I'm all about like understanding emotions. Essentially, like, and emotions are energy in motion, but when we fixate on them, they get stuck and stagnant within us. So we just want to just like see everything is constantly moving, shifting and flowing.
I think energy is so powerful, isn't it? When you think about, you know, any emotion that you have, be it happy, sad, whatever, it rules your whole day. So I think what you just said there is so important. I think you need to get rid of any negative emotions to be able to move forward, for sure.
Yeah. And it's about like understanding, like as an individual, like what works for you. Even like I had like a bit of a bad day the other day, and I was in the car, and my sat nav like put 15 minutes extra onto my journey, and I was like, damn it, I'm going to be late for the osteopath now. And I deliberately given myself extra time, and I was like started to get really angry, and then just by magic I was listening to an audio book, and at that moment where I'm like hunched over the steering wheel cursing, like really go on the audiobook, it said you can change your state by simply changing your posture and smiling. And I was like, damn you, I don't want to do this. I was like, okay, sign from the universe. All right.
Sounds like me.
Shoulders and smile.
And so I rolled my shoulders back and I started breathing, and I smiled through gritted teeth. And I'm not joking, like and everything changed. I was like, oh yeah, God, yeah, it does work. And then, like literally by magic, the 15 minutes just completely disappeared, and I ended up being early for my appointment. I'm like,
maybe you're a wizard.
Like, thank you. But it was just it was a really powerful like moment where I was like, it really is like the simplest things, like change your posture, smile, and you can change your energy, you can change your state.
So give us some examples. You talked about breath work. What does that mean in practice with breath work? Because I did sit there and try and do deep breaths the other morning in bed. Is that breath work, or is it something else?
That's a
We
whole
are
A panic attack, maybe.
I had a really bad headache, and I think it's perimenopause. I don't know, Naomi. I was like,
Yeah.
I've had this headache for 3 days this week, and I'm like, wow, where's this just come from? And I used to have migraines back after I'd had kids, actually. And then they went, and I can't remember how I managed to get rid of them in the end. They just seemed to go. But I was like, right, I'm going to sit here and take these deep breaths, count to 10 and breathe out, like something. I mean, I was like, what is causing this? But what does breath work mean? Can you give some examples about how you could embed that?
Yeah, absolutely. So breathwork is we practice breathwork every single day, like through breathing. But when we consciously bring our focus to breathwork, like we can like really make impactful change with our body's physiology, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Through our breath, we can upregulate our nervous system, or we can downregulate our nervous system. And there's different types of breath work. So you said like about 10 breaths, and you're trying to calm your nervous system. And there's another, so yeah, there's breath work that will upregulate your nervous system as well. And that's conscious connected breath. So what that's doing is it's breathing in a circular motion. So your inhale becomes your exhale becomes your inhale. And through this, like you oxygenate your blood, and your physiology will change. And the part of your brain, that thinking part of your brain called the prefrontal cortex, takes a little bit of a nap. And then it creates this pathway into the mind and the body. So even though it's like upregulating your nervous system, you're going into like your subconscious mind through your breath. So you'll feel like a lot of physical sensations, and you might get a little bit dizzy in your head, but it's almost like you're entering into this. I like to call it like the void. And if you know Dr. Joe Dispenza, he talks about going to the quantum field. So it's where you reach this like really deeply meditative state, where like you lose time, you lose space, you lose who you are, where you are, and what you are. And that is where we're like really open and receptive. And that's where we manifest and we create from. So the breath work that upregulates your nervous system, whilst it's like really active and like work to kind of get there, you have deep, profound impacts afterwards. But a session like that would be like an hour, for example. So probably not realistic to practice on like every morning, like before the school run. And also it can bring up like a lot of emotions, and it can be quite a process. You can do like shorter versions of that. that I always use for like deep, powerful, profound healing. I use that for trauma release. I work one-to-one with clients. I do groups and online. And my style is all very empowering, trying to like think about like what are the limiting beliefs, because that's what's held in the subconscious mind. And essentially, like this breathwork style goes into the subconscious mind, it connects the mind to the body, it acts as the bridge. So when we become aware of the limiting beliefs, that gives us, and we rewire those neural pathways through this breath, we can release those, and then that creates space for like the person who we're becoming, what we're manifesting and moving on to. Other styles of breath work, so like if you were like trying to relax yourself, like your breaths are going to be a lot more slower, more regulated. You'll have a pause at the top, you'll have a pause at the bottom. But breathwork styles like that, they are like short and sharp, and you'll get really good results. You can even like shift your state in like 60 seconds. So there's so many different like styles of breath work, and you can use breath for so many different things. There'll be ones to help you sleep, for anxiety, to clear your mind, to energize you. So, and you can do it, like I said, like 60 seconds up to like 60 minutes. It really depends on like what you want to achieve.
That's really fascinating. I'll tell you what I get, and I don't know whether it's not breathing as such, but when I can't explain other than when I go to bed and I am not awake and I'm not asleep and I see people and things, and it's so weird because I'm not dreaming, but it's just a weird state of mind to be in. And I guess that must be to do with your breathing, I would think. But just coming back a little bit to, the midlife crisis, which is obviously where we started talking. It's a journey that obviously, like I say, everyone except for me who lives in Disneyland, as you know, tends to experience. I mean, I suppose just one quick thing that I did think about when we talked about when you're going through things is, of course, losing people. That's always a big one, I'm sure, going through that. My mum, very, very sad and all of that. But how do you suggest that people navigate on their midlife crisis journey?
Good question. So I think it is very much about just becoming aware of like where they're at, and it's almost doing like an edit of your life, of yourself, and looking at in the mirror, so to speak, and calling yourself up on your own stuff, and looking at like, what do I want for myself for the future? Am I fulfilled? Like, because if you're at like in these phases, so like the different kind of things that like you might experience, for example, so like empty nesting, that can be like create that big upheaval, like divorce, separation, that often happens around this time, perimenopause, menopause, career changes, spiritual awakenings. So it's just really about like looking at yourself, at your life, like where you are, and asking yourself like what you want and moving towards that, and then taking like aligned action.
Thank you.
So, I mean, I love the sounds of all these kind of stuff. So, the sound baths and, releasing those energies and breathing. I have severe anxiety that I like to think I mask semi well. So I do a lot of breathing to try and calm that flight or fight kind of response. So no, I find it fascinating. But I'd like to know what are the kind of reasons that a client would come to you? What are the kind of typical reasons they come to you with, and what kind of support do you offer on a kind of daily basis so that our viewers can get a better idea of why they should come to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have like a whole range of issues. Lots of people like going through divorce and separation. I went through my own very traumatic divorce. So I think my story resonates with like a lot of people because they have seen like how I have like rebuilt my life, and I absolutely love my life now. And I think that is like the best testimony that there is, to see somebody who has come from nothing, lost everything, and have created a new life like for themselves. So a lot of clients who go through divorce and separation, men and women, actually, I work with both. As I said, like domestic abuse. Thankfully, I didn't have to deal with that, but I do work with a lot of clients who do, like trauma, a lot of trauma, and that could be like childhood trauma or anything that's happened later on in life. Because I'm a coach as well, so I'm able to like work like multi-layered, so do the coaching and implement like the holistic modalities. also like spiritual awakenings and career changes as well. So pretty much all of the things that I mentioned, I kind of like get a wide array of these areas that I work with.
Lovely, thank you.
I think it's so important to have somebody that holds your hand throughout this process, because I think for me, leaning into a counsellor during that time and a peer support group as well, it was a group, somebody that understood and was there to listen to you and to help navigate and to give you tools to, to, as I say, regain that energy and framework and perspective of where you want to go, I think was so important, because you don't want to put it all on a friend's shoulders or a family member's shoulders. It's not their job, right? So going back to this point of emotional, getting rid of that emotional energy, you don't want to go and talk about it to a friend. They don't want to hear all of that. I mean, yes, they'll say they're there, but it's not, it's not, you don't want to be offloading to people all the time. And I think that's why it's so important to have somebody that this is their job, right? They're there to be there for you entirely. And I had a counsellor for like 2 years, because I had, a bit like you, Naomi, everything hit the fan at the same time. The divorce, my dad passing away, losing a business after COVID, and also I had endometriosis, so I couldn't suddenly eat a load of food groups, not eating. And so all of these things build up, and you're like, oh my God. But when I started counselling, it was just for the divorce. And then she'd be like, you'd never guess what happened this week. She'd be like, oh no. Like, oh, you're not going anywhere yet. But I started with the divorce bit, because and even it was pre-divorce, because I was like, I don't know what to do with this situation. So I think having somebody to hold your hand when you're not sure, like even that pre-midlife crisis of like, what's going on for me? I'm not quite, I feel a bit emotionally all over the place. Is it me? Because the thing is, your decisions to change things could be affected by so many different elements. Sometimes you need also somebody to give you an objective look on things. So I think it's amazing what you do, Naomi. I feel quite hypnotized when I listen to you. I'm like,
yeah, me too.
I kind of like get drawn into it. I can imagine like your sessions. I really wanted to go to the Easter one we missed, but you do these amazing group sessions, don't you, as well? And with the breath work, I think I definitely need to lean into that, because I think if you learn these techniques, they're with you for life, right, to sustain things. And I think like you, Kelly, if we're always dealing with the emotional trauma, we're always in this fight and flight response.
Constantly.
And we need tools that we can learn from people like Naomi to kind of navigate those things better, because if we're always in that zone of just being anxious, or we can see it and feel it, right? We're breathing in short stints. None of that is helping us, sort of regain control of our confidence and our energy of where we want to be. So I think, it's been really interesting today to kind of just reflect on all those different aspects. And I think, if anybody wants to connect with Naomi, they can find you on Instagram, right, Naomi? And we've got also your information in the show notes as well. There's a free download, isn't there, I think, for people to be able to take away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you for being here today. Thank you, Kelly and Lynn, for co-hosting with me. We shall see you all soon.
Thank you. Fascinating. Really enjoyed it.
Bye.